live right now. I'm waiting for it. Oh shoot, I need to make sure that it's muted, so give me 1 second. Just like dance in silence. Oh shoot. Okay, I muted it. Hey guys, welcome to ASC webinar series number 5. Enhancing your creativity to get more done in 2020. Happy New Year. Welcome for all of those of you who are in the ASC watching through Zoom, and anybody who watches this live or on the replay in YouTube land. Thank you so much for checking us out. And this is, just in case, let me just really quickly do an intro for the ASC. The Accountability Success Circle is a community of people seeking networking and accountability support, and is focused on creating meaningful relationships, and focused on accomplishing specific personal and professional goals that help you enjoy your life, and obviously in the most fun way, because we care so much about having fun. So if you're interested in learning more about it, in the Zoom link, if you're not in the ASC yet, feel free to check out www.accountabilitysuccesscircle.com. And otherwise, we're going to just hit the ground running here and talk about creativity. Every month we have a theme. So this month's is creativity, and we wanted to just spend an hour of time with you guys to just talk about how we can use the power of creativity to accomplish our goals, have more fun, anything that you want to do. And I'm going to throw it over to Gary to get the ball rolling.
Awesome. Thank you so much, April, for that amazing introduction. Creativity. You may be thinking, what does that have to do with, crushing my goals? We're going to get to that. My objective for all of you watching is, across the next hour or so, you'll leave with a few things. First and foremost, you'll understand what creativity is and what creativity is not. Then, it's my hope to give you a little secret sauce that when you apply this, it will help you be more creative, help you see things in a more creative mindset, and at the end of the day, lessen the stress, because who needs more stress, right? And then it wouldn't be an ASC webinar without some really cool strategies, just so you can apply this thing. Because the last thing I want is for you watching this, whether you're watching it live or watching the replay, shaking your head like, all right, cool, that makes sense. And in the moment, like, you feel all great. And then the moment you close your browser and go away, it just dissipates. And you don't know how to take this knowledge and turn it into wisdom. Because that's usually what happens. I know from my own experience, is you go and you learn a whole bunch of stuff. You're like, oh, that's great. And you may scribble a whole bunch of notes. And then you go back and the real world hits you. And then a month or so from now, you find that notepad or that place in your journal where you wrote the notes, and you're like, oh my God, I totally forgot about it. So it's my goal for all of you is that you get some really cool ideas so that you can apply it and start to reap the benefits. So the best way to take this webinar is to just be present, be here. So understand you're all super busy. So if you have browser windows open, stuff like that, just set them aside, minimize them. And for the next 45 minutes, just be present and have an open mind, because a mentor of mine, once said that if you think you know everything, well, then you're not going to learn anything. Your brain's going to be like, oh, I know that, I get that. But what if hearing what April and I have to talk about today is the time when it's all going to make sense, where it's all going to click into place, and you're going to get something that you're going to be like, oh, I finally get it. Well, if you go with a closed mindset, you're not going to be able to process that. So first thing for everyone, because we're talking about creativity, what the hell is creativity? Like,
I thought you were about to be like, what is going on my screen?
what is going on? It's funny. Yeah, I see Apryl doing those. So I have no idea what she said. So
He does that to me all the time.
It could have been like kick me or anything like that. Actually, before we get into like what is creativity, I want to drop some stuff and say, like, why is this important? Apryl, would you agree that we live in a very complex world right now, right?
Yeah.
We like it's so fascinating at the same time. It's so overwhelming just thinking about all that has gone on in the last decade. Rewind the clock maybe 15, 20 years, all the technology, Zoom, what we're communicating right now was not even a thought. And there's studies out there that show in the next like 5 to 10 years, the jobs that are going to be available haven't even been thought of yet. So the world is evolving at an extremely rapid pace, and it's a little unsettling for most. And the military, they have this term called VOCA. It stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. And that is, when you understand VOCA, that's how they're able to be parachuted down into an environment that they're not familiar with, but able to acclimate themselves very quickly. And so in order to do that, you need to be creative. You need to essentially understand and be able to solve problems. But if you have like a sort of fixed mindset, thinking, well, how we've done it before is how we're going to do it now, you're going to be essentially out of luck. And I joke about this, but it's really interesting to think, I wonder what was going through the mind of the CEO of Blockbuster Video on his very last day, as he's like leaving, knowing that his business is done. And they have the idea for Netflix, but they didn't do anything about it. Isn't that like interesting?
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Apryl?
It is really interesting to just see how we have evolved, and things are going to keep on evolving, right? So you kind of have to keep with the times, and you have to almost think of these creative, outlets and these new innovative things, because people love new stuff. People love seeing progress. And so you can't really do that without using that creative brain to see, like, okay, you've had this market for how many years? Like, the fact that it's gone, it's even beyond me. But like, even in the last 10 years, how much has shifted in consuming, video and media. It's like everything is on demand now. And if it's not on demand and it takes too long to get it, forget about it. You're missing the mark. So it's crazy.
Yeah. And so that brings me to my first thing is, what is creativity? So Apryl, and the cool thing is Apryl has not been prompted with any of this stuff.
Yes.
This is going to be a very collaborative.
Yes, I'm your guinea pig, like, live person. I don't even know what he's going to talk about. Not completely. So yes.
What do you think of creativity? Like, what do you think creativity is?
Well, from what I know from you and all the conversations that have been happening in the ASC, I know that answer, but I'm going to say before that, a lot of what I thought creativity was, and I am not somebody who thought I was really creative, because I'm very math and science brained. It's this idea that, like, oh, I have to paint a pretty picture, make something, where it's a little bit more abstract than scientific and mathematical facts. So this ability to be creative is this idea of, creating something that doesn't have rhyme or reason, but you can, later people can kind of apply rhyme or reason to it, but it's not like in this set pattern. So it's kind of being innovative, being, doing things differently. And I was such a rule follower, and I felt like, I'd rather just follow prompts than actually, try to create new ones on my own. So that's the previous. But the thing that sticks in my mind from all of our conversations in the ASC lately is this idea that creativity is really just the art of problem solving, right? So you can take any situation, and yes, there might be these, quick and easy, here's how you do these things, but knowing that there's 50 million different ways to accomplish anything is your ability to leverage creativity to get that thing done. So yeah, I will stop talking there because I know I talked.
On. Yes.
I'm learning. I'm a student.
Yes. Apryl got it. And she hit the nail right on the head. Creativity is just the ability to solve problems. And I went to Webster's dictionary, and it basically said creativity is the ability to transcend traditional ideas, rules, patterns, relationships, or the like, and create meaningful new ideas, forms, method, interpretations, etc. Originality, progressiveness, or imagination.
Yeah.
And you're right. Most people, when you think of creativity, they get it mixed up with art and artistic. And it's unfortunate that most people don't think that they are artistic. They don't think that they're creative. And especially, when you look at some like beautiful works of art and you think, oh, that's creative. And then you look at what you do and you're like, this is me. I'm not it. This is that. This is what I do. It's not that. So therefore, I'm not creative. I'm broadly generalizing this, but it's what happens with most people. And the interesting thing is, yes, some people are more creative than others, but creativity is just the skill. It's an ability. And anything that is a skill, it can be taught and you can get better at it. And that's why it's important to hone your creativity skills. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment and how you can shortcut that. But what we talked about in the beginning, why this is important, imagine this. Imagine if you had the ability to come up with new rules, new ideas, that is essentially going to future-proof you. That's going to allow you in your personal life, in your professional life, be able to see where things are and where things have the potential, and you can come up with ideas to help you get there. So now that we know why it's important to be creative and what creativity is, I want to talk about all right, so what? How do we get there? And the interesting thing is, if you know me, you probably are not going to be surprised with this answer. But the easiest way to get to being more creative is essentially play. And this is if we had a soundtrack playing, this is where the record, we're like what? What are you talking about? And so I like to pose a question. And since Apryl is here as the guinea pig, Apryl, you will answer on behalf of everyone watching this. Apryl, is there a time, think of a time when you were playing, it could be sometime recent, it could be when you were younger. Explain what was going on. How did it feel? What would it look like? Just free flow.
I don't know why the first thing that comes to my mind when I was playing, because I was one of those nerdy kids who just loved to read and listen to books on tape. And I guess that's a form of playing in a sense, yes. But really playing. I think one of the things that I did when I was younger was me and a few of my friends, family friends, we created this thing called Unicorn Club. So it was just a few girls, we collected stickers and we would do stuff with the stickers. I can't even remember what it was, but we would have these meetings and we would play we were these super official, this super official club. I don't know if it was modeled after Babysitters Club or something like that, but it's just kind of emulating, something that we envisioned. So that was super fun to just play those roles, to be I'm the president and I'm the secretary for whichever meeting, and then having stickers to back it up, or I don't remember exactly, and I'm afraid to say it wrong and recall it from memory, but maybe my friends don't know either. But that was a huge thing that we would do every time we had a family party, or a this monthly party that we would go to, it was just like, okay, it's a babysitters club meeting time, and we would play together, we would talk, we would laugh, but we were having this like official meeting like we were adults. So that it just felt fun because I felt connected to them. I felt like I was playing this role, and whether or not it was, legit, it felt real. And so yeah, that's all I can think of right now.
Yeah, no. And would you agree, like in that moment, in that play environment, you didn't necessarily have any rules at the time, but you created all the structure,
Yeah.
all that stuff came out of thin air. And would you also agree it was fun and enjoyable?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the benefit of it was that, we could create our own rules, knowing that we were really kids. If the form of currency, like everybody had to bring a sticker and we put it in this box, nobody told us to do that. It was something that we decided on our own. And maybe we modeled it off of things that were influencing us at the time, but it was our rules. And so that was really empowering. And now I see that, now that we're talking about it, I'm thinking about like all of these things where, I am creating my own rules in my business and just the way that we run our family and all of those things. And that feels empowering, which is why, my definition of creativity has completely shifted, because now I only want to do creative things because I want to be able to, be able to not control, be able to, have a part in creating something that is my own. And so, yeah, cool.
Yeah. And so before going to like my example of what I did when I was a kid, April brings up a really good point. There are a lot of studies out there that show how you played as a child will directly influence how you will show up as an adult, because when you are playing, it's simulation. It's a low stakes environment. You are creating as you go, but the unconscious mind doesn't know the difference. And it's, a way of, just training. And in this study that I remember from when April was telling her story, they asked like thousands of women that played with dolls. They asked, how did you play with your dolls? What were the games that you played? What were the scenarios and environment? And they found a strong correlation with their personality as adults, as how they played with their dolls as a child. So the ones that were like very much sort of, I'm the boss, look at this, boom, 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 ended up being more of that sort of personality. The ones that were a little bit more sort of damsel in distress and stuff like that ended up having some of those things show up as adults. And it's really interesting because this is not about kids, but in order to know where we are now, it's important to see where we came from.
Totally.
As kids, everything that they do is through play. And the original toys that kids used to get were made of natural materials, wood, metal, and other sort of natural sort of things. One, to get them used to handling those. And then two, the things that they had help them learn how to do stuff. So it's no wonder why kids got my first kitchen set, or the little tea set, or the vacuum and stuff like that, because then they're playing house, they're playing cleanup, and they're getting accustomed to doing these things. As someone with a young toddler, it's so interesting. Last Christmas we got Garrett one of those little cleanup set. It was like a little kid broom and dustpan and duster and all these things, and he loves sort of like when we're sweeping, he loves getting out his and to help sweep. And he's learning, one, how to use these tools, and two, he's getting more accustomed to it. So it's our hope that maybe he will like cleaning. I don't know. But that is the cool thing through play, is that it helps you understand things that are very complex because you're doing it in a fun and novel way.
Yeah. So now I'm thinking, my kids are really into Nerf guns right now. So I'm like, what does that mean? But they will have, we'll have bunches of kids over and they're like all out like Nerf war. But I'm like, maybe I should pay attention to like the leadership roles and like how they communicate with each other and see how that shows in their personality later on. I think that there's definitely consistency there, but that's a really cool data point to share, because everything in, I mean, I'm a very organized person, Gary, and I like having, order and structure. And that was what I did when I was playing. Either that or, I had like my stuffed animals talking to each other, which is then another part of my personality where I just gab all day long and I like to talk, but they were having deep conversation, which is a staple of who I am, is like loving to have those deep relationships and connection with people. So I think that that's cool.
Yes. And so for me, when I was young, I did a whole bunch of things. One, I was the class clown. I was the one that was always like sort of showing off and performing. We used to do these little talent shows growing up, where we would create like almost like little music videos, stuff like that. We would like play like it was on cassette tape. Play everything from like the soundtrack of like The Lion King and stuff like that, or pop music, and we would dance to it and perform to it. And that was one of the things that I loved to do growing up. And also I played with Legos a lot. We used to build forts, and we used to like do all kinds of make-believe stuff. And so it's interesting seeing that as an adult now, one of the reasons why I personally love performing, doing improv. But also one of the things that I love about what I'm doing professionally is helping people, brainstorming and things like that. That is what I used to do a lot as a kid. So there are some strong correlations, but getting, back to the, the point and thinking about play and creativity. So, the question that I asked April, and I want you to think about, is like, think of a time when, whether you're young or whatever, when you felt truly playful. Like, what were you doing? Who were you with? Where were you? And like, think about like how that felt in your body, your heart, and your mind. And I'm pretty sure you felt very expansive. You felt very alive. You felt very connected. And I'm pretty sure you've done things that you probably didn't even think was possible. You were in this creative state. And they say to create a new neural pathway in the brain, it takes 420 repetitions. So for example, say you wanted to get better at anything, whatever the case may be, you have to do it 420 times to build a synapse in the brain. The synapse is like the connection point that connects all these ideas. Well, if you are doing it through play, you can shortcut that to 20.
What was the original number?
420.
So 420 to just 20.
20. Through play. And so this is one of the things that I like to, sort of correlate. We talked about like, all right, through play. Now imagine if you took that same sort of spirit, that same sort of mindset, and you put it to work. Like, imagine if you had that same sort of mindset, you saw the world like as a playground, and you applied it to how you work. Imagine what would be different. Most people, they feel like, oh, I'm in work mode. Whether you work for yourself or you work for a company, I know this happens to me. I go through these phases like, oh, work mode. And then it's just something about it that becomes very sterile, that becomes very sort of processed. And you are not going to be your most creative self. Essentially, you're just like going through the motions, and it feels like work. And you're not going to allow yourself to be creative. So I want you to think about like, how can you bring that spirit of play from, because it used to be seen as like, oh, that's a juvenile thing. That's something that kids do. But there's a lot of research now that showcases, like I mentioned, from the 420 to 20, but it talks about how play is an accelerant to creative thinking, to connection, to resiliency, to a whole bunch of other things. So that was the first thing. And April, what do you think about that before I shift gears?
No, I completely agree. I think that, especially if you care about having fun, I mean, things just feel so much harder when you're doing it out of obligation. So when you can actually enjoy the ride and think about it from a playful state, it just makes it time goes by so much faster, right? Like there's that whole time flies when you're having fun. I'm not the person that quotes that much, but that's something that always sticks in my mind, right? I don't know who said it, but it's one of those things where you need to, it's inherent in who we were as children, and like why is it that when we become adults that we can't play that way too. And one of the things that I love about having Gary as somebody who I talk to constantly is like I have that constant reminder that life needs to be playful, and I'm a playful person already, but it's one of those things where you can't ever have too much of it. And whenever I'm starting to feel stuck, it's like, okay, I got to take a step back, and how can I make this more fun and take all the resistance, all of the negativity that was keeping me stuck, and just start playing, or even just to take a break and go play. I think it was you, Gary, when we did our very first interview together. We were talking about games to play, and I think from that point on, it was like playing games on my phone became like a part of my routine. I get sucked in every once in a while, but it's also like that's my break, and then I can go back into doing what I was doing because I just played around a solitaire or something like that to just take my mind off of it and be able to look at it from a different angle again. So, okay, I'll shut up.
Yay. It's all good. And so I would like to throw out, here are some dynamics of play. And think about innovation, think about creativity when I talk about this. So when you're playing, you're crossing boundaries, you're self-organizing, you're improvising, you're experimenting. Apryl talked about, her club that she had when she was a kid. Mm-hmm. I bet you all of those things are happening. From like me building forts and creating these talent shows, all of these things are happening. You're taking risks. You're seeing what works, what doesn't work. You're being creative. And it's all just through this container of play. And a mentor of mine, her name is Gwen Gorton, she talked about a lens through which you can see the world. And most people, they see the world as a proving ground. And when you mean by proving ground is that, the people are competitors. You feel like you need to prove to whoever that you're worth it, or, that you are viable. And that ends up being very stressful. It's not very sustainable. It leads to burnout. Trust me, I've, had that lens of like the proving ground. But here's another perspective is imagine if you can see the world as the playground, as in, instead of competitors, these are playmates. Mm-hmm. Instead of like, oh, I have to do this, I get to do this. And you can bring that playful spirit. And typically most stuff that you start doing, you see the world as play, and then it starts to get serious, and then you start to see the world as a proving ground. So my invite to all of you is when you start to notice those tendencies to start to like, all right, chill out. How can I make this more playful and inherently be more creative? And so what I want to talk about now is, naturally you're thinking like, all right, cool, that that sort of makes sense. How do I do it? And the easiest thing is creativity is just all about coming up with new and novel ideas. And so one of the things, so if you're in the ASC, this week I had the challenge, and I suggested that you turn your brain into an idea machine. And how you do that is you come up with, give yourself a prompt, set a timer for 5 minutes, and think of all like up to like 10 ideas that have to do with that prompt. One of the things that I love that Apryl mentioned are, who are people that I haven't connected with that I need to connect with? That's, one thing. If you really want to stretch your brain is, what is an idea that is going to, solve world hunger? The point is not to have the perfect ideas. The point is to generate any ideas. And again, if you make it playful, you're going to take that sort of like, oh, I have to be good enough out of it. And you're just doing it. And this was something that I adapted from the book Choose Yourself by James Altucher. He has some other practices on how you can like sort of take back your life and be your own person rather than like a cog in the system. And it was really interesting when I started doing this practice. I think the longest I did the idea practice was 50 something days. And in the beginning, there was a lot of judgment. Don't get me wrong. I like to call like the inner voice in my head, WB&E radio, wrong, bad, never enough. Like all the like sort of thoughts of like, oh, who's gonna buy this idea? This idea sucks and stuff like that. And it just is what it is. But I persisted and I persisted and I persisted, and I still have those lists in Evernote somewhere. But the point is that this is just the practice, just like if you were to go to the gym and do sit-ups every day, is that you're going to start flexing your idea muscle. And I agree that when I was in situations to brainstorm, I found myself not judging my ideas as harshly as I have. And I was able to come up with things on the fly. So if you're the type of person that want to get quicker on your feet, this is a great exercise for you.
Yeah, I think also too, really important for those of you who identify with being a perfectionist, right? A lot of times people don't take any action because they're like, okay, well, now I need to find the right answer before I do anything. But there's also beauty, and I'm speaking about this as a former recovering or still recovering perfectionist, is that I can have an idea. And I'll also improv supports this as well. You can have an idea. It might not be the best, but there's different things that you can do to support that idea. And that might also be the catalyst to more ideas down the road. So even if it's the most ridiculous, path to get there, it's still an option. And you can use your creative brain to say, okay, well, there might be some components of that ridiculous idea that actually might work really well. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Apryl was not prepped for this. This brings me to my next big idea and way that you can help yourself be more creative is through the art of improvisation. I have been performing and teaching improv for the last 8 or 9 years. And I originally did it just out of, someone had said, hey, you should take an improv class. I took it to get better at public speaking. I didn't like Toastmasters. And I quickly found that when I took an improv class, the games and things that we played, one, it made me feel great because we were playing. It took a lot of stress off. But I found myself being able to think quicker on my feet. I found myself being a better listener. And I started taking these games and I brought them into the company that I worked with. And as a unit, we gelled more. We trusted each other more. And most people, when you think of improv, you think of like, whose line is it anyway? But also in the realm of improv, jazz is improvisation.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone remembers the TV show MacGyver, MacGyver is an improviser, as in his job is to like save the world, and he usually doesn't have anything at his disposal, and he's like, oh, give me that coconut and that lead pipe and this, and he dismantles a bomb all in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Improvisation, and I looked up the definition of improvisation, and it's the art or act of improvising or composing, uttering, or executing or arranging anything without previous preparation. And most people think, that when you think of improvisation, you think of just winging it. And it's not necessarily just winging it. It's helping you develop skills so that when you're put on the spot and maybe you are, doing a presentation and all of a sudden your notes are gone or the projector is not working, you're able to roll with it and not
just freeze.
Exactly. And practicing the art of improvisation will help you if you need to brainstorm or be creative, because brainstorming is essentially doing that. Creativity is essentially doing that, come up with new and novel ideas. Mm-hmm. And so there are some principles of improvisation that has helped me, and I'm just going to talk about 3 big ones, and then we're going to play a game. And so the first one is the concept of yes and anyone's heard of improv, probably heard of this. And yes and is essentially what it is. It's agreeing and building. You know, in improv, you know, if someone says a statement instead of saying no, which essentially stops all creative thought, you say yes, and then you say and then you add to it. That allows you to create something that you haven't, you know, that hasn't been done before, essentially being creative. And typically when I talk about improv and the concept of yes and in a business environment, most people say, well, that's great, but we can't always say yes to everything. Totally agree. But you can, you can acknowledge what was said so that people feel heard, and you can build on it. And so that is the big thing there is if you are saying yes, then you are allowing yourself to be creative. You're keeping the flow of information going. And yes, and can show up in many different forms. You know, typically people in business environments, if you're doing brainstorming, you know, someone throws out an idea. Typically what happens, someone thinks their idea is better, so they like deny it. They say, no, what about this? And imagine you're building blocks, and every time someone does yes and we add another brick, but every time someone says no, it's like knocking all the bricks over and having to start from scratch. So yes and in that environment allows you to create as many ideas as possible in a short period of time. And you'll find that the ideas that people come up with are ideas that no one could have come up individually. So that's one way of using the process of yes and. Another way is with yourself. How about you yes and yourself? Most of the time, as I said, with that WB&E radio, your thoughts are saying, no, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. Imagine if instead of like trying to talk yourself out of it, you're allowing yourself to flourish and grow. And you're actually saying why this is a great idea. And this whole concept of yes and brings me, actually, before I do that, Apryl, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I agree. I was like off on a tangent, like thinking about, oh, this is awesome. I don't really have anything additional to add. I think that it is, you know, what I love about yes and is this idea that, you know, especially for people who like struggle with the idea of rejection or, you know, it's just an alternative. And it's just a more positive frame, you know, reframe in terms of, you know, just outright saying no. And so, yeah, I don't have anything else to say. I was like so engrossed in what you were saying that I was like, oh, I don't have an opinion.
All right. Cool. Awesome. Moving on. The next one after yes and this one it's a big improv maxim, but it's not one that is talked about a lot, is make your partner look amazing. In the world of improvisation, when we're on stage, you know, we're an ensemble. Improv differs from something like stand-up comedy in that stand-up comedy is just an individual out there trying to entertain masses of people. But with improv, we're all creating everything together. And so if you have this single mindset of like, nope, my ideas are the best ideas, you're probably not going to make your partner look amazing. But if you embrace that mindset of how can I, like what Apryl is doing. Apryl is making me look amazing by putting these really cool captions. But if you approach things from that mindset, it will allow you to get into that creative spark faster. Apryl, what do you think about that?
I agree. I mean, I think that one of the things that, you know, because I also took improv just as a student, so I'm not as averse in the improv world as Gary is, but I think what's beautiful about being in that support role, I mean, it takes away the competition and the conflict, and you know, you don't put your best work out when you're stressed, right? So if your teammates aren't supporting you, even if you look at just you know, an athletic team, you know, one person can, you know, that has negative energy can really infect the rest of everybody else in there. So making sure that your partner, your team members, and being in support of whatever they do. But doing it from a loving place, it doesn't mean that you have to agree and say, you know, everything that you say goes, but having that healthy dialogue is super important. But you know, when it comes to the performance, then it's just like, hey, we're doing this and we've got this. It comes from, or it kicks everything off with a very positive attitude. So.
Yes. Woohoo! And then it brings me to my last improv maximum, and then we're gonna play another game. Is take risks and embrace failure.
Mm.
Now that is something, especially if you're a recovering perfectionist, is so challenging.
Yep.
Taking risks, embrace failure. And think about this. If you want to be creative, if you want to create something that is new and novel, how can you do that by not taking risks? How can you do that by not embracing failure? Because I don't know about you, but I'm not the type of person that can just do something and the first time it's flawless. What about you, Apryl?
Yeah,
you're very astute at a lot of things, but
I mean, I think about the time when I, you know, decided that I was going to do a show on YouTube, which in itself is a very creative thing, right? You know, people are like, oh, I have my own TV show. YouTube is another form of television. Some people go and get all of their content on YouTube. So being a content creator is a creative way to kind of solve that desire to, you know, be on TV. And I remember the first day that I was supposed to do, it was a live stream, and it's still, you know, it's still on 44 episodes later. But the very first time I got blocked on Facebook because I was doing Facebook Lives at the time. And I was blocked. And I could not do the recording live, and I panicked, but I said, okay, I'm going to hop onto Zoom and I'm going to record it and I'm going to post it immediately. And that's going to be my thing. I'm going to do minor edits. But I did it. I had some minor edits, but then it helped me create the framework for the show, you know, episodes later, because I do my best to try to have it be completely live online, but unedited, so people can kind of see the real rawness of the content. But, you know, I had to take those risks. And even through the process of that first 10 episodes, my technology was failing. It was not. And now I'm just embracing like, hey, we might mess up on this technology and echoes everywhere, or like people, you know, dropping off in the middle and having to try to figure out. My echo is talking to me.
I was wondering if she was going to say something.
Did I say echo?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, okay. Yes. He's like, I don't understand what you're saying. So, you know, this type of failure, right, where, you know, we might not be totally prepped for everything, but then if it matters that much, then it's a learning lesson. And what I love about failure is that you always learn from your mistakes. So there was one show, we're actually going to redo it in 2020, but there was one show where the technology, there was like something that I had to, you know, I have to update it, install an update, and I didn't do it. And so the video was literally 1 hour of me talking and the other person talking, but you couldn't hear what they were saying. I was so embarrassed, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to just still put it up in public. Nobody might watch it, but this is a big learning lesson that I do not want to use this platform anymore, which is why I use Zoom exclusively now, because it still has its quirks and its, you know, stuff that's not ideal, but it's so much better. And I only learned from the failure. So it's like, it's fun. And I think people enjoy watching people fail. So I'm like, all right, I will be the example. Let's do it. So yeah.
Exactly. And here's a reframe for you, is that failure is only failure if you don't learn from it. Because a mentor of mine, you know, once said, Gary, instead of saying failure, just say feedback. It was just feedback. And based on, you know, April's story, one thing that I really want to highlight that you might have missed, that's really important, is when Apryl talked about her first show and how she got blocked from Facebook, and she's committed to doing this. She came up with a creative solution. That is creativity in its purest form of solving a problem. She had a challenge, which was she wanted to do the show. She had set everything up where it was going to go a certain way, and that way didn't pan out. And at that point, it's like choose your own adventure. She could have done a number of things, but what she did in that moment, and that's the beauty, is that a lot of times, that's when we find out how creative we are, is when we're put under pressure. And I'll talk about a way to simulate that and get better at it in just a moment. But Apryl was like, oh, what if I do this? Boom, boom, boom. Creative solution. And the cool thing about that is that gave her some really great feedback and intel on how she's doing it now. And she wouldn't have gotten that had she not been placed with that adversity.
And that's still the one episode that still has the most views out of everything, which makes sense because it's like the first one, but it's so funny that I totally royally screwed up in my mind. And it's still I still did it. And I proceeded to do 42 more episodes after that. And, the next one's going to be next week. So it's still, it allowed me to continue to move on and not just give up. Because I think a lot of times people will be like, oh, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do it every day. And then they do it one day and then they miss the second day. And they're like, okay, I ruined it now. But there's creative way, maybe daily wasn't the right fit, right? So think of something creative. What else? Do it once a week, do it once a month. As long as you're doing it, especially if it's something that you really want to do. And there's, lots of things that people say that they want to do, but they don't do it. And so how can we make this, more, how can we do this more creatively? Is that perfect question that I think I wrote down a few pages back. It's a great reminder. Yeah.
Yes. And so using the spirit of improv and those three things, will really help you become more creative. Now, Apryl and I, we're going to play a game. The cool thing is Apryl, she's played this game, but not really.
What is that mean?
And what we're going to do, we're going to go back and forth. We're going to essentially do one thought at a time, and we're going to co-create a eulogy for someone. And so, again, Apryl doesn't even know any of these parameters. So I'm going to say a name, I'm going to say an age, and I'm going to say what they did just to get us started. And then Apryl is going to start by, we're doing a eulogy for this person. And we're going to co-create it in the moment using the principles that we, just talked about, the whole thing about, yes, and, taking risks, embracing failure, and making each other look good. And we'll see what happens.
Are we doing one word story?
This one's going to be one line at a time.
One line. Okay.
So one thought at a time. So you can do a thought, and when you're done, I will pick up where you left off, and then we'll go until we feel like this eulogy is done. And so the person her name is Alexandria. When she died, she was 78 years old, and she was an accomplished author.
Okay, so one thought. Do you want me to start?
Yeah, just start. We're just gonna we are one person giving this eulogy as if we were at a funeral, and we're gonna go back and forth, and we'll see what happens. This may end up in crash and burn, but it's all good.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna start with the intro. Today we are going to honor the amazing life of Alexandria.
We lost her too soon. We felt like she had so much more to give, but it's not about what if. At this moment, we're going to look back on who she was.
Most people just see her and know of her as a New York Times best-selling author, 5-time New York Times best-selling author, but she was way more than that. She had a fond love of helping people, and she, even though she spent a lot of time in solitude writing, she loved being in crowds of people.
Yes, so much so that Coachella is naming one of the tents after her. It's going to be the Alexandria tent, because she would do these social experiments where she would go to festivals and she would go to large groups, and she will stage these, I guess they were dramatic art, but it made so many people smile.
And you wouldn't even think that an author could translate the power of word into the power of visual creativity. She was so strong at it, but she really knew that the power of her words was where the money was made, but it was in the art that she really made a difference, because you look at this artwork and it just changes you. You look at life through a whole different lens, and you wonder why she never really talked about this as much as she did in all of her books and all of that.
Yeah, and I like to think that it's because she just loved it so much. It was something that was so pure that she just wanted that to be separate. She didn't want to just be known for that, because that was her gift to humanity, to society. And little known fact, that's where she met her husband, Charles, who is sitting over there. And they had a beautiful marriage of, 35 plus years, and they raised 3 beautiful children.
And I recall a time, and this is when I first met Alexandria, and she was bringing all these people together to this art gallery, and she had just met Charles, and there was something so profound that she said that night that sticks with me forever. And it was this idea that we don't always see what is actually in front of our faces unless somebody else mirrors it back to you. But the power could be in when you can be that mirror for yourself. And I just thought, oh my gosh, how do we make that happen? And there was just so much power in the artwork that was displayed that day, and there was so much love in the room, and everyone knew everyone. And to this day, like, we're all in this room together. It's just amazing to see how much her work in all the different areas has impacted all of us.
Yes, and for that, we are going to miss her greatly, and we should raise a glass in toast of Alexandria.
Alexandria, you're here.
And scene.
I was like, okay, I need to tie things back. And I'm kind of rusty on my improv. Not to say that somebody who has never done improv couldn't do that, but it was interesting. I was like, where am I going? It was good. I felt rusty, but I was like, okay, I got to remember. And I was starting to go somewhere with the whole, and then you talked about her husband, and I was like, okay, I got to loop the husband back. But how do I not forget what I wanted to say? So it was interesting, and it was fun. It's always fun to do those things because you have no idea what's going to come out of the other person's mouth.
Exactly. And well, the cool thing is, to that point is, in this game, you have to be truly present, truly in the moment. And we both collaboratively created something that one of us individually couldn't have come up with. And it was one of those things where Apryl would say something like, oh, cool. And then that would make me think of something, and I would throw something out there. And it was truly like a back and forth. And yeah, you may think like, oh, I think I know where this is going. But if you're truly supportive, you're like, oh, that was where it was left off. All right, cool. Let me support that.
Yeah.
And keep going. And that's a really cool activity. It's a game, that you can play with other people, as a way to just express creativity, connect with each other. And Apryl, what do you think that game teaches people?
I think it teaches people to listen, for sure, to be open-minded. A lot of the intentions that you said at the beginning of this webinar, but just this idea of, not poo-pooing, an idea that's not perfect, because, and also understanding that, you can come up with a whole bunch of things on your own, but it might also be a benefit to do it in community, because there are other people that might have other ideas. And, I was thinking about maybe, for those of you in the ASC who are looking for something creative, and maybe I'll speak to the, you can do it in one of two ways. One, maybe this is a, you're talking to somebody who is a colleague of yours business wise, and you're trying to brainstorm something new, or even just an accountability partner who's also running a business that's separate, and playing this game where you say, let's talk about, pitching this new idea that we have, and you can do it for each other's, ideas that you're trying to create. And, if you aren't in the business world, you can do this, with your team at work. You could even do this with your family at home, and just say, let's create this new thing that we want to do. It could even be a new initiative. So one example of an initiative that I'm doing with my family is no technology days once a month. And we can talk about, an experience where, maybe it's the end of the year and they're like, here's what we did on our no technology day. And then we all kind of chime in and then use those ideas and, kind of use those to fill in the gaps for what's actually going to happen this year. So you can use this creativity to actually come up with really good ideas. Like, hey, we tried curling for the first time. Oh, let's take a look at how do you do that? Or we took a trip to San Diego. There's different things that you can do if you just allow yourself to imagine. And maybe it might not be, something you can take action on immediately, but it's something that can fuel some more, or a variation of that. And that will get you a lot further, a lot more progress than it would be if you were just like, okay, let me just think in my head and let me just do it by myself. So yeah, that was super fun.
Yes. And it reminds me of that African proverb, if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. In that, yeah, a lot of times we feel like, oh, I got to just do this myself. I got it heads down. But you'll be surprised at how more creative you'll be if you tap into, other people around you. And I know that can be scary because of a number of different reasons. But just like what Apryl said, is you will be surprised at how connecting with someone, even if they are not in the same sort of industry or doing the same thing, just hearing their perspective can give you a new way of thinking. Mm-hmm. And so one last thing that I'm going to do just to sort of wrap things up is, most people don't realize this, but as it pertains to being creative, there are different states that your brain is in. And there is one state that is your creative state, and then there's one state that is your not creative state. And most people try to do both at the same time, and they wonder why they're having such a challenge. And so if you want to be creative, you need to get into what neuroscientists call the default mode. And the default mode is in that realm where you are daydreaming, where you're not necessarily thinking about an idea. And again, this is an area that most people don't want to go to because they think of it as frivolous, or they think of it as wasting time. But that's where the brain is connecting disparate ideas. And I like to put this over to everyone is, think about trying to be creative and innovative. Were you doing it when you were trying to do it, or did an idea come at an interesting time? What do you think, Apryl?
I mean, I'm just even thinking about the ASC as how it has evolved. It is evolving over time, and it was an idea, but I just was like, I don't know how to do it. And, when I first started it, it was one of those things where I just was like, okay, I'm just going to see what people need and use that as a way to, create what it is that I'm trying to create right now. And now it is what it is today because of a lot of that brainstorming and a lot of just observing. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, no, you did. All those ideas didn't come from all right, here we go. It's iteration. It is over time. It is putting an intention out there and then going away and letting your brain work on that. And so as a way to remember this, it's like you have two people living inside of your brain. You have the clown and you have the editor. They cannot coexist at the same time. And when you want to be creative, you bring out the clown. That's where you just like sort of let all the ideas go. That's where you daydream and stuff like this. And then once you have that, then the editor can go in and organize thought. And I like to think that is, one of the benefits of the ASC is within that you have the editor and the clown. I tend to be more the clown side, and Apryl tends to be more the editor side. But together, we are a perfect duo.
Awesome freaking team. And that's the beauty of that too. It's like find people to complement your strengths and use them to, and that's why Gary and I have been kind of accountability partners for, what is it, like almost 4 years now, where we are always bouncing ideas off each other, not just in the ASC realm, but also in our own personal businesses and the ways that we work with people. And it's a very healthy relationship where we can tap into each other's strengths and leverage it, and it's like you get more done even with that. And this is all that the ASC was built off of. And so we want to be able to support people the way that we've supported each other, and know that it's not like Gary and I are like ruling this thing. We are in it just as much as you guys. We are just helping facilitate and making sure that everybody's comfortable and everybody's everybody's needs are met and people are being listened to. And so, and it's not the typical thing. It's not the typical type of program or community. So that's creative in itself. And so, empowering you to, envision something that you want to create, even if you don't know the how, but slowly start to ask yourself questions. How can I make this more fun? How can I make this more playful? How can I drive more people to be interested? How can asking yourself those questions are the first step to finding the solutions. And it's all creative because you can model it off of other people, but you can also bend it so that it molds what you want to create. And anything that's not just specifically following the rules is you tapping into your own creativity. So
agreed.
Perfect.
And so to wrap it up, I turn it back over to you to think of what are you going to do differently, based on the things that you learned. And feel free to leave it in the comments or just chat with us. Our goal here is to provide as much value as possible and really help you, as we've been saying, get more done while having more fun. And working on your creative muscle is definitely an accelerant to that. And it will give you that creative license to make space for things that may seem nonsensical, like doodling or taking a walk, or sometimes just diving into one of your favorite nonfiction books, or a show on Netflix, because you're doing it in the spirit of creativity and doing it to be inspired. So there we go. So Apryl, back over to you.
Absolutely. And just to finally wrap it up, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, we're doing a series of these webinars for free and out to the public so that you can learn more about us and see what types of conversations we have. But if you're feeling the craving to be in community and have more support on this, on your terms, there's a bunch of people in the community thus far, and we're going to continue to grow it and have amazing people in this community. So obviously just go check out www.accountabilitysuccesscircle.com. All the information is there. I'll say this now through January 31st, or when we hit 100 members, whichever comes first, you will have the opportunity to join the community absolutely free, indefinitely, no charges ever in the future for this base community. And so get in now and feel free to, join if you can. Or if you have any questions, then that you can reach out to one of the two of us too. And for those of you that are in the ASC, we love you guys all. And obviously feel free to add more to the comments if you have questions or want to go deeper, and we'll do what we can to support you. Yes. All right. See you guys later. Bye.